thank you everybody for joining. It's a very special moment to share with you my vision about the future of care and to be able to answer your questions. I know that for everyone, this is a very difficult time, in the time of the corona crisis, where people with Parkinson's are not at risk of becoming infected, but they are certainly, we think, at risk of experiencing the more severe complications of the coronavirus. I know that other people, Ray Dorsey, Michael Oken, have addressed this in detail before. So I will leave it there, apart from saying, please keep your distance, wash your hands, try to stay safe. Preventing the infection, I think, is important for people with Parkinson's at this time. So try to be good to yourself and to your near ones and try to stay safe. My main disclosure for today is that I'm an author of the book, as Abby already indicated. This is me proudly showing my own very first copy of the book. I think it's an important book for all of us for a variety of reasons. The book, and here it is in a little bit more detail. The book was really triggered by a paper that my friend and close colleague, Professor Ray Dorsey, from the University of Rochester, and I wrote in 2018, and which we called the Parkinson pandemic. And of course, the word pandemic is the strangest word possible right now with the corona pandemic happening. But we actually literally used that word pandemic way before corona even came into play. Because if you come to think of it, Parkinson's unfortunately fulfills all the criteria of a pandemic. A pandemic is a worldwide condition, growing fast, sparing no one. Parkinson's affects men, women, the young, the elderly, and that has a tremendous impact both on affected individuals and on society. And Parkinson's fills, you can tick all the boxes. Parkinson's, as we now understand, is the fastest growing neurological condition on the planet. Of course, there's an aging effect. We all become older. But if you correct for aging, Alzheimer's disease remains about stable. Stroke declines actually a bit because we're now taking better preventive measures. And out of all neurological conditions, there literally was one that stuck out in an international survey, and this is Parkinson's disease. And we think there's something happening. These are examples of well-known people who recently announced that they have Parkinson's disease, and you'll recognize some well-known names among them. Paul Bocuse, the famous French chef, Neil Diamond, Roger Bannister, the athlete, a guitar player. One of the more recent ones was Alan Alda, the famous actor of the MASH series. And of course, Ozzy Osbourne was, I think, the most recent person. And I hear probably some of you already thinking, these are all men. And that's true. Parkinson's affects men more often than it affects women. But men, it's clearly not a disease of exclusively men. This is Linda Ronstadt, who also announced that she has Parkinson's disease. I won't go into all the details as to why we think men are more vulnerable to the risk of developing Parkinson's, but it is certainly a fact. But women are not exempt from developing Parkinson's, and there's many, many women, unfortunately, also affected by the disease. And what we think is that Parkinson's disease, just like the famous pyramids in Egypt, are at least to some extent man-made. Of course, there are genes, genetic factors, your hereditary material that can play a role if you develop disease at a young age. But we think that because the fact that Parkinson's is rising so fast and that it's the fastest growing neurological condition, this is not explained by a new gene that suddenly happened in the population. We think this is pollution of the environment. And this is a bit of a complex slide, but what you see on the x-axis, the horizontal line, is the growth in a nation's national economy. And on the y-axis, the vertical axis, you see the number of new patients with Parkinson's disease. And I'll highlight just one of them. Right at the top near the arrow is China. Parkinson's is exploding in China. And we think that this is because they are now having their industrial revolution. This is an image literally taken from China not too long ago. And if you come to think of it, James Parkinson first described Parkinson's disease in 1817, when in England, where he lived and worked in London, the Industrial Revolution was taking place. We think it's pollution, heavy metals, solvents, but in particular, we're very worried about pesticides. One of them is paraquat. Paraquat is a very toxic compound that if you give paraquat to a mouse or a rat, it will kill off the substantia nigra, the black matter, which is precisely the area involved in Parkinson's, and the mouse or the rat will become Parkinsonian. Many countries in the world, even China, have now banned the use of paraquat. In the United States, as you can see in this slide, the use is still abundant, which I think is incredible. But in the Netherlands, for example, my own country, paraquat has been banned, but the farmers are now using variants of paraquat, which have never been tested for toxicity on rodents, and which are just chemically a little bit different from paraquat. So we're very concerned that even today, worldwide, people are still being exposed to toxic chemicals that may be causing Parkinson's. And this is a paper from the New York Times questioning, for the right reason, why a toxic chemical, in this case chlorpyrifos, hasn't been banned, but there are many, many more examples. And this is an interview I gave for a Dutch journal, so you can't read it, at least not except for the few Dutch people maybe on the line. But it's a debate about whether or not Parkinson's should be recognized as an occupational hazard disease. And in France, Parkinson's is now officially recognized as an environmental hazard for farmers. I think that's a bit of an extreme point of view, but it's just to illustrate that worldwide recognition is growing, that we are doing something to ourselves, and that people with Parkinson's, that the fast rise in numbers of patients with Parkinson's is related to our environmental pollution. And it's one of the issues we address in the book. What we obviously also address, and by the way, if you're interested in buying the book, which of course I can highly recommend, this is the website where you can order the book. You can also order it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or bol.com if you're in the Netherlands. If you might think we're doing this to make more money for ourselves, this is definitely not the case. All the proceeds that, all the revenues that the book will be generating will go to Parkinson charities and to efforts to end Parkinson's disease. The reason we're pushing the book is that we want to raise awareness for Parkinson's as a very common disease, a debilitating disease, and that we need more money from governments, funding bodies, to try and eradicate the disease if at all possible. And while we're waiting for the cure, to deliver better care. So what the book is really about is a pact to prevent, advocate, care, and treat. The subtitle of the book is A Prescription for Action, and our prescription for action is these 4 items. The cartoon is drawn by a wonderful Dutch lady who lives with Parkinson's, Marina Noordegraaf. And I'll be talking to you today about better care. And my fellow authors, Professor Ray Dorsey, Professor Michael Oken, and Todd Shearer, who is the CEO for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, will have their own webinars discussing the other 3 elements of the pact. And here they are, Michael Oken, Ray Dorsey, and Todd Shearer, again drawn by Marina Noordegraaf. So, on to care. No, sorry, not on to care. Before I do that, I will stop sharing the presentation and I will read a small portion of the book for you, just to give you a flavor of what the book is all about, and then I'll proceed with my presentation. And it's about chapter 7, taking care, because we are going to talk about care in the remainder of my talk. The subtitle of the chapter is Helping Those Who Bear the Parkinson's Burden. And it opens with a statement. One of the first things that happens when you get Parkinson's is that the phone stops ringing. There's a quote by Alan Leffner, a retired business owner and a Parkinson's disease caregiver. Today, in many parts of the world, the majority of people with Parkinson's are never diagnosed. Even among those who are diagnosed, most do not receive appropriate care. The almost universal underappreciation of this disease, however, stops at the doors of anyone who lives with or cares for someone with the disease. Hans Jacobs, we've changed his name, is a 52-year-old bookkeeper from the oldest city in the Netherlands, Nijmegen. When Professor Bas Bloem, his neurologist and an author of this book, told him that the symptoms that had plagued him for years were caused by Parkinson's disease, he began to cry. And so did his wife Anna and their daughter, Christine. Bloem assumed that the family's tears were triggered by the bad news. Instead, the Jacobses were crying with relief. A glass of water and several tissues later, Hans Jacobs was able to speak. He said, "Recognition. Finally, the beast got a name." That's from the book. And even as I'm reading it, it almost gives me the goosebumps to reread the own words that we wrote, because for many people, those 4 words, "you've got Parkinson's disease," are an incredible penalty. And at the same time, it can be a relief, because people have known for a long time that something was wrong in their bodies. And to at least hear the name of the disease, to give the beast a name, and then to start fighting with the beast, can be somewhat of a relief. And I will tell you, and all the folks listening, you're not alone. We are there to fight with you. And I will tell you a little bit about how we can try to make life better. So in current care, there are lots of challenges. I think, and for all of those of you living with Parkinson's, you will know this. When you come to the hospital, what we typically do is take a snapshot, a quick, still moment from what is otherwise a complex film in your own life at home. We ask you to drive the long way to the hospital, and we know that driving is unsafe for at least some people with Parkinson's. As you can see here, the spouse is actually already horrified by his wife's driving behavior. But this is a very serious matter. People have to drive long distances to come all the way to the hospital, where people have to wait for a long time in waiting rooms. And we know that people with Parkinson's, believe it or not, have been caught taking extra medication, sitting in the waiting room, hoping to make a good impression on the doctor. I've seen patients practicing the tapping test in order to make a good impression. And I don't mind telling my patients they're doing well. In fact, it gives me pleasure to do so. But I want to hear about the problems they experience at home, which you cannot see in the examination room. Another frustrating element of Parkinson's is the moment you're in the hospital, most people do paradoxically well, much to the frustration of the patient and the spouse. People, for example, with bad freezing, the walking difficulties, suddenly able to move very well, only to freeze again on the parking lot on the way to the car. Falling is something you never get to see in your clinic, because falling happens at home. The changes in the efficacy of the medication, the on and off fluctuations, are virtually impossible to capture in the 10-15 minutes that you're in the hospital. And more importantly, we don't get to see how you folks live in your house. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that this is how you live, but this is an image that was drawn by a nurse who came to one of the patient's homes. We advocate exercise, we advocate healthy diets, and this is how she was living. So we think that it is essential to see patients in their own home living environment. And one of the, I think, paradoxes of the current corona crisis is that we are now forced to come into your homes. Telemedicine has suddenly been implemented at an accelerated pace. Funding bodies are now reimbursing telemedicine visits. So if you folks are out there seeking care, hopefully now your doctor or the nurse or the GP can come into your home, sometimes physically, but a telephone can do miracles, sometimes video conferencing, as we are doing today. But the telephone is actually a simple way of reaching out, connecting, and hearing the story. And then Parkinson's, of course, is one of the most incredible diseases on the planet because people can compensate. If any one of you has heard me speak before, this is one of my great passions, to always look at what people can do themselves and how they compensate for their disease. And this is Nikolaos Koukoulakis, a former European weight lifting champion from Greece in Europe. And he sent this video and shared it with me. This is him in his home, freezing. This is actually where freezing does happen, in these crammed environments. But despite his walking difficulties, he can run effortlessly up and down the stairs, which we know is a consistent finding. He can ride a bicycle without any effort. But the moment he disembarks, he's frozen to the ground. And very importantly, he's still an avid exerciser. And even though he can barely walk, after a period of intense exercise, he can walk. Look at this. He can walk seamlessly, effortlessly, and look at the end of the video. Hop! He's very happy with it. Please make sure that you get your exercise. I tell all my patients two things. A, do something every day. The norm is 3 times a week, but if you exercise 3 times a week, there's always tomorrow. If you have to exercise every day, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to do it. And the dose is interesting. You have to pant a little bit, little shortness of breath, but still be able to maintain a conversation. That's the right dose. And do that for about 30 to 45 minutes every day. And it doesn't matter what you do. Could be running, could be cycling, could be brisk walking, it could be swimming, it could be anything, as long as you bring up the frequency of breathing. Adjusting it to your heart rate is usually a bit difficult for people with Parkinson's because they have more difficulty increasing their heart rate. That's nothing to worry about. It's a given phenomenon. So tailor it to your breathing. So make sure you pant. Your sentences become a bit smaller, shorter, but you're still able to maintain a conversation. And this is the take-home message, which I always really enjoy. People with Parkinson's can compensate for their disease. You can see that a wheel is missing, but with a little counterweight at the other end, the tractor is still able to move. And this is in one cartoon the essence of Parkinson's. And we try to treat both. So as a doctor, I always tell my residents, the people in training to become a neurologist, what you see in people with Parkinson's is the mix of what the disease is doing and how people compensate. Doctors use medication and deep brain surgery to treat the underlying primary disease process. But the compensation, the counterweight on the tractor, the cycling, the running up and down the stairs, is what physiotherapists, occupational therapists, dietitians, nurses, there are over 30 different disciplines that can potentially help people with Parkinson's disease. And the same wonderful Marina Noordegraaf drafted this cartoon, a poster of all the different compensation strategies developed by patients. I'm happy to share it with folks later on if you're interested. And this is a detail of the 7 main strategies that we've identified. We published this in a high-end journal with examples of variants of each of those 7 categories. So 55 different strategies, 7 categories. And we're now doing experiments where we're trying to test with each patient all those different strategies and see what do you like most and what fits your personal circumstances best. And this is an example of an older paper, 2014, of the different professional disciplines that can be involved in Parkinson's care. Now, this is not to say that these people should always be involved. What this slide is saying, these can be involved if needed. We live in a time and era of personalized medicine, and the key is to engage the right discipline at the right time for the right problem. When we did this paper in 2014, we had identified about 19 different professional disciplines. We just published a new paper under the title, The New Kids on the Block, because we came to realize that we were missing out on what you could call a second ring of experts that also have help to offer. Think of an ophthalmologist. Eye problems are a big issue for people with Parkinson's, and they're extra dependent on seeing properly to compensate for their disease. Think of a dentist. Dental issues can be a big issue for Parkinson's. A urologist, problems peeing. A pulmonologist, we now know that respiratory issues can be an issue in Parkinson's, which is exactly the reason why we think the coronavirus is a bigger threat to people with Parkinson's. That's why the pulmonologist is in this slide. And you can read all the different disciplines yourself. And of course, and this is something that is the closest to my heart, this is our multidisciplinary team in Nijmegen, the city where I live and work. But the man that's sticking out with the laptop is the patient. And we have now an increasing recognition, fortunately increasingly worldwide, that the most important partner in the team is the patient. The patient is not the goal, the target of our well-intended actions. The patient is the partner in healthcare who co-decides about what needs to be done and who is well-informed and engaged. And this is maybe the most provocative cartoon that I've seen in a long time. It's by Sara Rigara, a young female patient from Sweden, who is now doing her PhD with me on self-management and self-monitoring. And she added up all the single minutes of contact with a healthcare professional each year and added all together, the minutes with a neurologist and the GP and the physio was 1 day. The other 364 days, she is Sarah, the PhD student, Sarah, the friend, Sarah, the student, and I think, and that's shown in blue. And it shows that patients are so much more than their disease. And we need to really stop thinking of patients as patients. I actually hate the word patient. You're persons with a unique wishes and needs and priorities. And a large chunk of your life, you're that person. And sometimes when you're in the hospital, you're maybe the patient. But I like to avoid the word patient. And it really relates to the new definition of health. Maybe you know or maybe you don't, but the old definition of health was the complete absence of any physical, mental, or social well-being, which makes none of us healthy. I have a minor running injury right now, so I'm sick. Do I look sick? Do I feel sick? Of course not. What they wrote in this paper, I wasn't an author, I wish I wasn't, is that we should propose health as the ability to adapt and the ability to self-manage. And I think it's just beautifully said. This is the new definition of health. And in that regard, this man is a healthy person because he is missing one leg, but he's going out surfing. And I think I saw this on Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, and I took a picture because I think this illustrates modern medicine. It's not about what you cannot do, it's about what you can do. I'm not romanticizing things. Parkinson's is a difficult disease. You'd rather not have it. But the idea that the world stops when you've got Parkinson's is conceptually completely wrong. people can and want to contribute. And this should be our focus in healthcare. But you can't do it alone. Oftentimes, as a physician, as a neurologist, I feel like a specialist on an island. And what we really need in healthcare is networks. We need to collaborate with multidisciplinary teams that involve the patients to bring out the best. And this is what this famous young wizard was already telling us. So an example that's actually highlighted in the book is ParkinsonNet as just an example of multidisciplinary care. This is the Netherlands. It's a huge country, 200 miles north to south, 100 miles east to west, but it's covered with a nationwide network of over 3,000 people who are trained to deliver optimal care to people with Parkinson's. And it's nothing very secretive. What we do is we provide good training to professionals according to the latest guidelines, and we make sure that they treat a high caseload, so they're good, they know their stuff, and they treat many patients. That's one. We heavily invest in informing patients, making them full partners in healthcare, and then you want the team, including the patient, to collaborate. We bring our professionals together once every year in a nationwide theater, and it's a really wonderful experience because everybody in this audience lives, breathes, is passionate about helping people with Parkinson's. What we do during the breaks is you see these colored cords for the name tags. Blue will be the physios, and green will be the OTs. In red will be the dietitians. So that during the breaks, the different team members meet each other. And they can say, hey, you're a physio too, and they can learn from each other. But during the breaks, we also bring the cities together. So now you see around the table a physio, an OT, a neurologist, a dietitian. So now the team meets each other, and when people meet, they start to deliver better care. And the one thing that I'm really proud of is Parkinson TV. You can see the website. We broadcast live television to patients, as we're doing now in the webcast. We've done 2 on coronavirus already that have been viewed many, many times. And it's a way of bringing knowledge right into the patient's own living rooms. We've done close to 70 episodes in the Netherlands, and we've done, in collaboration with Ray Dorsey, in total 10 episodes in the United States. This is the one on diet, as you can see, and these are all on YouTube, and they're all accessible for free. And hopefully this summer we're going to record more episodes. So what about the results? If you start to collaborate, we've published a whole series of papers that evaluated collaborative care. And it shows that if you engage a team of well-trained experts who collaborate and engaging patients, it leads to better care, fewer hip fractures and other disease complications, and it was cheaper for society. It saved the Netherlands 30 million in euros each year for Parkinson's care alone. This is what's happening if you start to collaborate and work as a team. And for that reason, ParkinsonNet is now brought to other countries. There are now networks in California, in Rochester, upstate New York, in Luxembourg, in Norway, and soon in China, in Italy, in Germany, and in a range of other countries. And finally, in the dying minutes, I will tell you that meanwhile, we are now taking the next steps in optimizing care, because we think we can still take some next steps. And one of the starting points was going back to you folks and ask you what you felt was important. So we did a project called The Voice of the Customer, which is a specific deep interviewing method to arrive at the core needs of your clients. It's a method borrowed from industry. And what the patients told us is, give us one point of access, one person that can easily answer questions, who's easily accessible, or who can help us to navigate in the right direction if that person cannot answer the question him or herself. So what we're now doing is a new experiment with personal managers, where patients are being allocated to a personal manager who supports you remotely, doesn't have to come physically to your home, and who either solves your problems directly or says, if I cannot do it, I know who else can do it within the network. And I think the next big step in healthcare is for all of us to become more proactive. What we tend to do in healthcare is wait for a problem to arise and then kill the fire. I think the next big step is that we should become more proactive and try to prevent problems from escalating when they're still easy to control. And for example, remote monitoring using a smartwatch or another wearable sensor is a development that will be coming your way soon. And again, I think the corona crisis is going to accelerate the development of telemedicine and telemonitoring at a rapid pace. And my dream of the future is that either a diary, a digital diary, or maybe a wearable sensor gives you some results on key domains. And if all the traffic lights are green, don't come to the hospital. Don't drive the long way to the hospital. But if a traffic light turns yellow, or let alone red, this is the time to come to the hospital. That is the time for maybe the nurse to first contact you in your own home, addressing many problems, and only if needed, you come to the hospital. So, to almost conclude my presentation, I think the key point that I want to make is optimal care for people with Parkinson's is a multidisciplinary effort involving experts, well-trained, multidisciplinary, with the patient as a full member of the team, and collaboration is the new competition. I will close by urging you one more time to have a look at the book. You're supporting the good cause. It has a lot of valuable information about better care, advocacy, how to prevent a disease. Again, there will be other webinars to address those other items. I think it's a really good book. It's an important book, and I hope that you will read it. Thank you very much. And I'll stop sharing the screen here. And then we've got almost half an hour left for discussion. So let me see where I can find those. That's probably in the Q&A. Yeah, wonderful. So I hope you folks can still all hear me, and otherwise I'm sure that Abby will intervene. I will just read out loud here. So Atika, hi, thank you for joining. My father has Parkinson's for the past 8 years. Over the time, he's not able to balance his body and feels heavy-headed, especially when the medicine starts kicking in. As a result, he tends to sleep for a long time. How can we overcome these issues? All right, so just one point at the start. I can give generic answers, but to give personal medical advice is both dangerous and actually not allowed. So I will give you a general answer, which you then have to take to your doctor to get specific personal advice. And I hope that people understand that for all the medical legal reasons, I cannot give personal medical advice. But what I'm hearing in this story is a few elements. One is sometimes people feel very sleepy during the day, and the medication can sometimes make this worse. Most of the times, when people feel sleepy during the day, it means they sleep bad at night. Parkinson's does not pause at night, and one of the most commonly made errors in Parkinson's care is that people provide you medication during the day, but forget to treat you during the night. So make sure that you speak to your doctor and make sure that you get medication to also cover the night. Make sure that all the nocturnal circumstances are optimized, the nocturia, the peeing at night. Nights can be a tremendous challenge for people with Parkinson's, but it's treatable. Maybe not easy, but it's treatable. Drowsiness during the day usually means a bad night. So that's one element. The other element is that when people feel heavy-headed, it could be a sign of what we call in doctor's terms orthostatic hypotension, which is a dropping blood pressure upon rising. again, that's common and it's treatable. Taking some extra salt with your food, lifting the cranial end of the bed by putting wooden blocks under the two legs of the bed and on the cranial end. And there's a range of other measures to treat orthostatic hypotension. That could be another cause of heavy-headedness. And I hope that this helps your question. Now, Jorge Orozco, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Thank you for joining. He's an MD, neurologist. There's a potential relationship between coronavirus and Parkinson's as published in 1992. And he fears that we may expect to see an increase in Parkinson's cases in a short time. Well, Jorge, I hope you're incorrect. We know that the virus has a predilection for the lungs, but we also know that there is certainly, there are people where the brain is also affected by the coronavirus. And so far, I haven't seen immediate cases of Parkinsonism as a result of the coronavirus. So I hope and pray that you're wrong, and we'll have to see. I think for the time being, people have to just try and prevent becoming infected with the coronavirus for the reasons that I already mentioned. An anonymous attendee, welcome nevertheless. What are your suggestions for better coordinating care? Are there hospitals or countries who have a good model? Yes, if you Google under my name, the latest paper that we have published in Parkinson's disease, and there is a new paper coming out in the Lancet Neurology anytime, describes how we can better coordinate care. I think the Parkinson nurses are exceptionally well suited to take on that role, but formally speaking, it doesn't matter who does it as long as somebody does it. So rather than speaking of a care coordinator, it's better to speak of care coordination. Sometimes the GP can do it. The problem is it's usually left in the dark and nobody says, I am the coordinator. So think of the Parkinson nurse first and foremost. If there is no nurse or if the nurse cannot do it, try to find somebody else and try to make explicit who is the coordinator. And in terms of good models of care, read the papers that I mentioned, which I think are very good. And one is out and the other one is coming out very soon. Terry Ahrens, welcome Terry, thank you for joining. During this crisis, and PD patients that live in assisted living and in some cases unable to socialize, how do we get them up and exercising? Well, I think this is a very important question, Terry. Thank you for asking. Again, we published a paper, and Abby, I think we should find a way of maybe via the website sharing the stuff that I'm mentioning, but we published a paper last Friday on exactly the issue that Terry was raising. The corona crisis means staying at home to avoid becoming infected, but staying at home means more loneliness and social isolation and lack of exercise. I think what we're beginning to see is beautiful examples of group exercises that can be done in the homes. Dance for Parkinson's has videos out on the web. If you go to, for example, the Parkinson Foundation, the large Parkinson Patient Association in the United States, if you go to probably any Parkinson Patient Association in your country, they will probably provide you with links to websites where physios are hosting exercises so that people can continue to exercise even in their homes. Parkinson's UK is a wonderful source of information. EPDA, the European Parkinson's Disease Association. So look at those Parkinson patient associations, and there are definitely solutions, dancing, exercising, group exercises that people can still do at home. Doing nothing in isolation is terrible. Monique Bosman, hi Monique, from the Netherlands. How to know which discipline I need at different moments in time. I only see my neurologist once every 3 months. It almost relates to the previous question, Monique. This is where the care coordinator is important. So obviously, not all patients can know this for themselves, although I strongly believe that well-informed patients are hopefully with time better and better able to begin and identify who they need themselves as well. But I think speaking to your Parkinson nurse or maybe just asking your neurologist, what other disciplines would be good for me given my Parkinson's, given my personal circumstances, is key. There is not a one-size-fits-all. Physios are usually very helpful, OTs are usually very helpful, but it's never one-size-fits-all. So speak to your Parkinson nurse in particular and try to gather as much knowledge yourself. Look at Parkinson TV on YouTube in the English versions, in the Netherlands in the Dutch versions. Try to become more educated yourself so that you can co-decide. Michael Adam or Adam Michael, not sure which way, but either way, thank you for joining. How do you suggest patients best deal with their heightened anxiety, especially during the COVID-19 crisis? Again, excellent question, and it's an issue that we addressed in the paper that came out last Friday. I think this is a unique time for people with Parkinson's because it's a stressful time for all of us. I'm perfectly healthy, but even I experience the stress myself. And we know that people with Parkinson's are particularly vulnerable to stress. So I'm not sure what the best answer is, but I know a few answers. One is anxiety can be responsive to more dopaminergic medication. So some of my patients simply require more medication in a time of crisis, and make sure that you can reduce the dose after the crisis if this is possible. Mindfulness is a treatment which we're increasingly recognizing as a beneficial, effective treatment for Parkinson patients to alleviate anxiety. Yoga and other stress-relieving mindfulness type of interventions are helpful, and they can be delivered remotely at home. If needed, see your doctor, maybe even see a psychiatrist in the worst case, but anxiety is treatable partially with medication, partially with non-pharmacological interventions. Lauren Trapp. Welcome, Lauren. Thank you for joining. What is an optimal diet for folks with Parkinson's? That's a very good question, Lauren. Actually, there are no bad questions. They're actually all very good. The honest answer is that we don't fully know, but there's a number of things that are important. One is all people with Parkinson's have a tendency to develop slow bowel movements. So drinking a lot of water, 2 liters, half a gallon per day, is essential to keep your bowels moving and also to prevent the orthostatic hypotension that we talked about a little bit earlier. If you have slow bowel movements, your medication will not work as well and more unpredictably than when you really have good bowel movements. So high fibers, exercise, and a lot of water is essential to keep your bowels moving. If it still doesn't work well, speak to your GP or speak to your neurologist or Parkinson nurse. The other thing we tell people with Parkinson's is drink coffee if you like it, enjoy it, or black tea, because there's some evidence that it might do something good to the brain. A Mediterranean diet seems to reduce the risk of developing Parkinson's. Whether it is good if you already have Parkinson's, we don't know, but I generally tend to my patients stick to a Mediterranean diet, which is probably good for your heart and other reasons anyway. And there is some animal work, and an animal is not a human being, that dark fruit, and with dark fruit, I mean the more colored the fruit, like strawberries or blackberries, these contain antioxidants, and antioxidants are probably good for the brain, in particular the substantia nigra. So hopefully that helps to answer your question. And there's a very good episode on diet of Parkinson TV that's on YouTube in English. Sarah Pisani, hi Sarah, we're friends on Twitter. Nice to see you here as well. What is the evidence out there about the efficacy of physical exercise in Parkinson's? And how are the age and severity of PD moderators in this relationship? For all of you listening, there is good scientific evidence for the benefits of exercise. There is good evidence, as good as there is for drugs now, that regular exercise suppresses the motor symptoms of Parkinson's just like a drug. Exercise works like a drug. In addition, exercise helps to treat slow bowel movements. It helps to prevent osteoporosis, brittle bones, which can help you to prevent a fracture should you stumble and fall. Exercise is good for the heart. And I can tell you that we are submitting a paper next week to a high-quality journal where we've done a study where people with Parkinson's were asked to exercise 3 times a week, and where we made brain scans before and after the exercise. And we showed that in people with Parkinson's who did not exercise, the brain shrinks over time. And with regular exercise, believe it or not, it's mind-boggling, we stabilized, we stopped the brain from shrinking. And we also found that the brain was making new connections to other healthy brain areas, thereby helping to treat maybe the progression of the disease. So if you were still hesitating, exercise. Do it on a daily basis, 30 to 45 minutes. If you find it difficult to exercise or to find something that you like, go to an exercise therapist or a physiotherapist and try to find a program that you like, that you enjoy, and that you're likely to adhere to. Exercise. Dave Orlovsky. Hi, Dave. Nice to see you here. Thank you, 4 gentlemen, for what you do. Well, you're welcome. I ordered the book, but in the meantime, I also listened to your book, and it's absolutely wonderful. Oh, wow. Well, thank you, Dave. You're welcome. This is not even a question. It's a compliment. Marguerite Fleming-Smith. Hi, Marguerite. Thank you for joining. She says, I love your book. Thank you, because it's full of valuable information. Would you consider sharing some of your slides so I can continue to study the book instead of making slides? Yes, I will make sure that, and Abby and I will find a solution that both the papers that I mentioned, the key papers that I mentioned in the answering and during the presentation, as well as some key slides, will be shared with the people who listened. John Hugen, I hope I pronounced that right. Hi, John. Thank you for joining. Hello. Have you made any inroads with any groups in Canada? Well, yes and no. I have good friends and colleagues in Canada. Fortunately, there are some excellent neurologists in Canada, and there was some initial interest to bring the ParkinsonNet concept to Canada, but the discussion stalled at some point, probably because the payers also need to buy in, of course. So the short answer is, unfortunately, nothing concrete ongoing right now with Canada, but if we find the right people and some kickoff funding to build a network, then obviously I'm very interested to help out. Dan Keller. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Dan says, if the pandemic of PD is related to toxic herbicides, how can this problem be addressed? It's massive. Can there be a neurologically safe herbicide or pesticide? Well, it's a good question. The A in the pact is for advocacy. And I think all of us should be approaching governments and other authorities to clean the environment, to at least get rid of all the pesticides with known toxicity, such as paraquat. I think it is outrageous that paraquat is still used in some countries in the world. Same holds true for trichloroethylene, which is abundant in the environment. So we should clean the environment from existing toxins. We should get rid of the continued use of all the toxins that are still out there. We should test any new herbicides for toxicity in animal models. And probably there should be an international movement towards organic foods. And of course, a single farmer, and by the way, I'm not blaming any farmers. Farmers are honest, decent people trying to make a living. In a worldwide competition, they are probably forced to use all these toxins to at least make a living and produce their stuff at a decent price. There should be a worldwide approach and move towards organic food so that we can make that affordable in a worldwide competition. Dave Orlovsky, sorry, hit enter too soon. Could you discuss the light beam therapy talked about earlier? Yeah, so light beam therapy is interesting. First, depression is certainly among the key symptoms of Parkinson's. And light therapy is a known therapy for depression at large. There have been now a number of studies looking at the effects of light therapy for Parkinson's. And although it's not at a class 1 evidence level yet, there is now careful evidence that light therapy could be good for particularly the mood symptoms and maybe to improve sleeping problems for people with Parkinson's. So hopefully that answers your question. Dietrich Borchardt, I suspect this could be German. Schönen guten Tag, Dietrich. Exercise helps and matters. Is there evidence for any neuroplasticity, i.e. renewing capacity for dopamine production, or is it just compensation of symptoms? So, Dietrich, I partially addressed it in an earlier answer when I talked about preventing the shrinkage of the brain and the sprouting. We don't have evidence yet that it works on dopamine production itself. Daniel Korkos, a wonderful neurologist, or actually a rehab specialist in the United States, is doing a study now with dopamine scans to see if exercise acts directly on the dopamine system. Until then, it's still open. Our research is showing that it really works to boost the compensation mechanisms in the brain, which to my mind is equally good. You know, you can either treat the dopamine system itself or to boost compensation. The latter is now, I think, there's evidence. The former is currently being studied in the United States, among others, by Daniel Korkos. Ram Kondapi, hi Ram, thanks for joining. Any comments regarding the gut versus brain connection? Well, there's a very lively connection, both neurally with the vagal nerve between the gut and the brain. We are fairly convinced now that for not everyone, but for many people with Parkinson's, the disease starts in the gut. Slow bowel movements can antedate Parkinson's for many, many years. Slow bowel movements are a key symptom when you already have the disease. And there are rodent models where you bring Parkinsonian pathology into the gut and you wait for a few weeks, it actually spreads all the way up to the brain. So yes, the gut-brain interaction is a very lively, I would say, not even a hypothesis, it's there. We don't understand exactly how and why. So whether you should treat the gut, for example, using by treating the microbiome, is still an open question. We don't know. Treating your slow bowel movements to constipation is key. I want to reiterate that. I'm mindful of time. We've got 4 minutes left. I'll go as quickly as I can. And Abby, I'm asking you to interrupt me at when you think I should be stopping, all right? So Kevin Krejci, hi Kevin, great presentation, Dr. Bloem, thank you. Can you expand more on current technologies in the pipeline and can help us to monitor our cells 24/7? Yes, I can. I think, again, the crisis works as a catalyst, and there are major developments that in my lifetime we will see as part of routine care. There are now smartwatches, but also sensors on a belt, on the ankle, that can help track the symptoms of Parkinson's. I have to admit, it's early days. It's still laboratory based, and you can optimize a sensor to detect Parkinson's in the lab, but the lab is not the home. So we need to bridge the gap between laboratory measurements with these sensors and the home. That's work that's ongoing. And in addition, I think digital diaries, monitoring your symptoms yourself on a digital diary, which is then proactively screened by your nurse, is another important development. So I think wearable sensors are going to be an important part of everyone's lives within the very near foreseeable future. Howard Beckman. Hi, Howard. The book is great. Thanks. Well, thank you to you. Can you talk about the types of pain people experience with Parkinson's? Yep. Pain is, again, just to illustrate the complexity of Parkinson's, a symptom of Parkinson's. It's a number of pains. Some of the pain is responsive to dopamine. It's an off-period symptom. So when you find that the pain fluctuates with the intake of your medication, and the pain is worse when your symptoms are bad and it's less when your symptoms are well controlled, then it means that this is a non-motor off symptom. But in addition, people can have a chronically stooped posture and have, for example, chronic back pain, which is then your run-of-the-mill low back pain caused by a bad posture. And then you need a good physiotherapist to correct your posture. A frozen shoulder or a painful shoulder is a common early symptom in Parkinson's, probably related in part to the reduced arm swing, something for which hopefully a physiotherapist and sometimes an orthopedic surgeon can help. Some patients know the feeling of a very painful foot, a twisted, painful foot in the early morning when they wake up. This is an early morning dystonia, which is another example of the nighttime problems and another good argument to treat the night. So if you have this painful twisting of a foot in the early morning, make sure that you get a long-acting dopaminergic drug to help you go through the night. I'll do one more question, and then I'm afraid we're reaching the end of the hour. And probably, Abby, I'm just thinking we should redo this because the questions keep pouring in and people hopefully seem to enjoy it, but not sure. It's really odd, you know. I know there's more than 100 of you out there, but I can't see any of you, but I hope you're enjoying it. Hiam Kramer, hi Hiam, he's from Boston, USA. My story's in the book. Thank you for contributing. I'm an active participant in the Michael J. Fox Foundation PPMI initiative. I have a GBA mutation, and the trial finder helps me to recruit for clinical trials, but I want to do more. How can I help? Well, a couple of things to conclude. A, Michael J. Fox Foundation is a wonderful foundation. They are the largest funding body in the world to fund research for Parkinson's, and they are an incredible source of information. So make sure that you follow the Michael J. Fox Foundation, support their initiatives. They have a so-called trial finder, which is a dating mechanism to bring patients who are interested in research closer to the researchers who are in need for volunteers to work in their projects. So sign up for the trial finder of the Michael J. Fox Foundation if you can. And signing up for the trial finder also means that you can be identified more easily for other trials. For all of you, and this is maybe to end, is we are and should be advocates, all of us. I think we should all have a big mouth. What we're saying in the book is that in the 80s, when HIV emerged, patients with AIDS literally chained themselves to the front doors of pharma companies demanding better treatments. I think many people with Parkinson's are wonderful people, but we have been way too passive, too friendly. I think the time to cry out loud, to call for more money for research, to ask for better treatments, to demand that we clean the environment, to demand the move for organic foods, to demand the testing of toxic compounds. I think the time is now. And if you consider yourselves advocates and we do this together, I think we can make this world a bit of a better place. So thank you for your attention, for showing up in such high numbers. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm very happy to do another one if there's enough volunteers or enough requests for it. My passion is to create a better world for people with Parkinson's, and I hope that tonight helped. Thank you again.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I just wanted to follow up with Bas and say that we can reach out to everyone who had a question that wasn't able to be answered over email. And we can also post resources on the endingpd.org website. That'll be your best resource for any new information, videos, and upcoming webcasts. We will be doing something next Wednesday, details and time to come, with Dr. Todd Shearer on advocacy, and Dr. Ray Dorsey will be giving a talk on prevention on April 22nd. There's a survey that will pop up when you're done with this webcast too. We'd love to hear what you guys want to see, whether that's more author talks from advocates, researchers. We really do appreciate your feedback. And thank you for joining us today.
And can I say one more thing, maybe? If you like the book, please give it a good review on Amazon. Again, this is not for me or for my own proceeds. All the proceeds are for Parkinson charities, but more 5-star reviews on Amazon help with the awareness of the book. It'll go up on the list so that more people will buy the book. What we hope is that the book will reach the authorities who can take steps against Parkinson. So giving a good review on Amazon helps, or another book company helps with our joint effort. Thank you for doing that.